Hi everybody, welcome to Langer at the Mic. I'm Mike Langer. After the Habs lost 5-4 to the Boston Bruins on Thursday night, their season is officially over, which is sad because they won't play another meaningful game until October, but it's a good thing because they sucked this year because they secured the 5th highest odds at winning the draft lottery, which means they will pick no lower than 7th. So that's a good thing. And with the season being over, we're going to do a season in review video here where I'm going to give letter grades to 30 Habs players in 20 minutes or less. There are 30 players, yes, 30. That's a lot of players that have played in at least 20 games for the Montreal Canadiens this season and are still under contract as of this moment. I'm going to give them letter grades based on how I think they performed this season, and we're going to go by position, forwards, defensemen, and goaltenders in order of who averaged the most ice time per game. So let's get to it. Leading off with the forwards, Nick Suzuki, B+. I think Nick Suzuki, as in his first year as a captain, did everything he possibly could have done this season. He was essentially a point per game player early on when he was playing with Cole Caulfield and Kirby Dach, but they of course got hurt, and he was playing most of the second half of the season with either AHL or bottom 6 caliber players, and he still put up career highs in both goals and points. The only reason why I don't have Suzuki graded higher is just because I think for him to be considered among the elite centers in the NHL, he really has to be a consistent 70-point player regardless of who he's playing with, ideally even a point per game player, of course. But given all the circumstances, Suzuki still had a very productive season and he keeps improving with each season, which is why I give him a B+. Next among the forwards, Kirby Dach, B. What a trade that was by Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon to bring him in from Chicago. Just the change of scene did him wonders as he set career highs in both goals and points and really showcased his speed, his size, his puck handling, his passing, his ability to win battles down low, and really create offense regardless of what line he's on. Now I just want to see more from Kirby Dach. He had his career year. He showed that he's way better than what he was in Chicago. So at 22 years old, I hope he could stay healthy, get more consistent, produce even more, and keep improving. Next, we have Cole Caulfield, A. He established himself as a proven goal scorer, especially under Marty St. Louis. His shot, his one-timer, his hockey IQ. He's the most dynamic offensive player that the Montreal Canadiens have had probably since Alexander Radulov and PK Subban and Alex Kovalev before that. My only concern with Caulfield is durability. I don't know if his lack of size has anything to do with the shoulder injury that he suffered this season. He's also a highly intelligent player, so I think he'll continue to learn how to succeed at the NHL despite being an undersized player. And of course, he has a great mentor to learn from in Marty St. Louis. It's not a stretch to predict that Cole Caulfield will be the Habs' first 40-goal scorer since Vincent D'Anfous in the 90s. He was still tied for the team lead in goals despite playing almost 40 less games than Nick Suzuki. Anyway, next we have Sean Monahan, B. Monahan was just a solid veteran middle six forward for the Habs while he was healthy. Like I said, he allowed Nick Suzuki to focus a little bit more on offense because he took some of the defensive responsibilities off of his plate. Monahan was also 55% in the face-off circle, so it just sucks that his health was an issue for him again this year, but just for the 25 games he played, I give him a solid B. Raphael Harvey-Pinard, who, believe it or not, was 5th among forwards in terms of ice time per game, and I have him at B+. I think it's fair to say that he exceeded all expectations. He was called up just to be an extra body in the lineup, but he found a home on Nick Suzuki's line, and he definitely did not look out of place with the offense that he produced, and he stayed there playing against, again, not only producing offensively, but also playing against the other team's best lines. I think B+ is a good place to start him at, and I'm excited to see what he can do in his first full NHL season, which he has definitely earned next year. Next, we have Josh Anderson, C+. I've mentioned this before on this channel where the problem with Josh Anderson is that he is paid to play at 100% of what he's capable of. I mean, I guess all players are, but really Josh Anderson, his 100% of what he's capable of is just realistically not sustainable over the course of an entire season. He did score 20 plus goals for his first time as a Montreal Canadian this year. He is an amazing leader in that locker room, but as I also mentioned before, I just don't think what he brings over the course of a season really justifies his contract today, and I definitely don't think it'll justify his contract by the time he's in his 30s. Next, I give Christian Dvorak a C. To be fair to Dvorak, he has dealt with several injuries over his 2 years with the Montreal Canadiens like many others, but he's also one of only 3 Habs that were over 50% in the face-off circle this year, the others being Monahan, as I mentioned, and Jake Evans. So he brings that, but Dvorak is at under a half a point per game offensively. He is under contract for a few more years. I don't know if he'll be around till the end or if he'll get traded, but yeah, he's just a third line center, or ideally a third line center at most on the Montreal Canadiens. For Mike Hoffman, D+. And it's pretty simple. He was signed by Marc Bergevin to bring offense, and at around half a point per game last year and this year, that's disappointing because ideally you'd want him to bring more offense. It feels like too often he's in a situation where he should shoot and he passes, or he should pass and he shoots, or he turns the puck over, which leads to a chance the other way, and he doesn't back check hard enough to try to break it up. I think he was also put in a position to fail by Marc Bergevin because he was brought in to be a driver and creator of offense, when in reality, he's more of the type of player that complements great offensive talent around him. And who knows, perhaps if he gets the chance to play on a contending team again, maybe that'll reignite some of his glory days from the Ottawa Senators. Next, Denis Gurianov, D+. I think we're all intrigued when he put up 8 points in his first 13 games as a Hab after being acquired for Dadonov, but he has been pointless since, and I just think there's too much risk and complication in terms of retaining him. The qualifying offer will be too high, and I just think he'll ultimately accept a deal to the KHL. Ultimately, a spot on the roster next year should be given to a player who is younger, less expensive, and has less risk associated with him. Yoel Armia, D. He did have the hat trick against Washington, but he's just way too inconsistent and just so frustrating to watch because he is capable of being that big-bodied, dominant bottom six forward, but he just doesn't show it enough. And he has proven to be a big factor in the playoffs, but ultimately injuries, inconsistency, too expensive of a cap hit at $3.4 million with term. Yoel Armia, D. Jonathan Drouin, D+, as we're well in the head case frustrating section among the forwards here. But I've said this plenty of times here on my channel, and I know people have disagreed with me, but I'll keep saying that I still think Drouin has a very unique skill set that if he is brought back on a vet minimum contract where he's not expected to do much, not even expected to be a regular in the lineup, but just used efficiently on the power play and at easy matchups at even strength, I still think he could be an effective player for the Montreal Canadiens. But Drouin is still technically under the expensive contract, and he was expected to be one of the leaders of the offense this season, which is why I have him at D+. Jake Evans, C. I don't feel great about this because Jake Evans is such a likable player, but if we're being honest, I think he took a step back this year. But I also think that by virtue of all the other injuries on the team these last 2 years, Jake Evans has been put in positions where he was expected to be more than he actually is. And I think Evans is at his best when he is playing in a clearly defined checking role alongside other like-minded players, which he doesn't really get an opportunity to do a lot of when the Canadiens are a bottom 10 team and trailing in most games. Next, this one absolutely sucks. Brendan Gallagher, D+. He's still the heart and soul, emotional leader of this team and gives it all on every shift, even though there isn't much left in the tank compared to what there was 5-6 years ago. But the bottom line is only 8 goals and 14 points at over $6 million a season with term is just not going to cut it. The Canadiens just simply have to make the most out of Brendan Gallagher while he is under contract with them. And I think the answer to that, and I've mentioned this before, is to ultimately load manage him and just get the best hockey out of him when it matters most late in the season. And if or when they do make the playoffs, load manage him like that until they ultimately buy him out. Jesse Ylonen, C+. He has shown flashes of being able to play a fast and tenacious game, but there is a clear delta between he and Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Simply put, I think Ylonen can be a very fine complementary role player in the bottom six, but he does need to show more consistently to be able to hold a regular spot in the lineup. Rem Pitlick, D. After he totaled 26 points in 46 games with the Habs last year, he took a clear step back this year where he was barely able to hold a regular spot in the lineup early in the season. And he started getting his opportunities late in the season. He's been put on waivers a couple of times. He even played a couple of games with the Laval Rocket. But ultimately, for being a veteran bottom six player who took a clear step back from last year, I give Rem Pitlick a D rating. Oof, this one's going to be tough. Juraj Slafkovsky, D. The only reason why I did not give him an F is because he was an 18-year-old playing his rookie season in the NHL. And while he showed flashes of how he could use his size, his shot, especially his one-timer, and I think he's underrated as a passer as well, I also want to be very clear, and I've mentioned this before as well, that I put more of the blame on the front office and coaching staff for mishandling Slavkovsky's rookie season than I blame Slavkovsky for underperforming in his rookie season. It's your first draft pick as a front office and coaching staff. You win the lottery, you're at home. I don't care if there isn't a clear consensus #1 overall prospect, but you absolutely have to get that first overall pick right. Pun intended. If you're Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon, and Marty St. Louis, you have to have a plan for Slavkovsky in his rookie season, and they seemingly did not, and Slavkovsky did not make the situation any better with his play. Alex Belzile, you know what? I'm going to give him a B because he was basically a write-off over the last couple years when you talk about constructing the Habs bottom six. But honestly, this year, I think he made the most of his opportunities more so than he ever has. He's finally found the back of the net. So I'll just say that I think he passed my expectations this year, and I'm excited to see how he fits into the mix for the bottom six next year. Chris Tierney, D. There's not really much to say other than the Habs claimed him off waivers because they desperately needed bodies at center. And Tierney, whatever. He played on the fourth line. He didn't really score a lot of goals, didn't really do much defensively. He won a couple of faceoffs, but that's really about it. I give him a D rating. Last but not least at forward, Michael Pezzetta, C. He's a depth player, he's a feel-good story, but he's also such a meme and a fan favorite, and I think also a locker room favorite. That Tiger Williams celebration when he scored the shootout winner against Buffalo was unreal. He's one of their leaders physically. Just every time he goes out there, he's looking for someone to hit. He's more than willing to drop the gloves, although he kind of got the crap beaten out of him by Wayne Simmons the other night. I give him a C because even though he's just a depth player, he does bring something fun and something different to the lineup. But with that being said, he has to keep working extra hard to earn a spot on the roster next year and to keep a regular spot in the lineup going forward. And now onto the defensemen, starting with Mike Matheson. He gets an A. Despite the injuries he dealt with earlier on in the season, he ended up having a career year offensively, even though he did not play a full 82 games. He is by far the best skater the Canadians have on the back end, maybe even on the entire roster, but he has also shown that he has a sneaky good wrist shot and really good passing, really good playmaking abilities. I remember he seemingly played 30 minutes a game in Midget AAA with the Lac St. Louis Lions, and now at the Montreal Canadiens, he averaged over 24 minutes of ice time per game, and he was a plus player on a bottom 10 team. The early returns on bringing him home in return for the Jeff Petrie trade looks like a home run so far by Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon, and I just hope he continues to improve and that he could stay healthy over the full course of a season. David Savard, C+. I have a tremendous amount of respect for his game. He's a shot blocking king, but if we're being honest, I think he played a little bit over his head based on how thin the Canadians are on the right side of their blue line. He can handle the minutes, but he's not a great skater, and he's kind of clumsy with the puck on his stick, which is why I want the Habs to either sign, trade for, or draft and develop that eventual top-end right-handed defenseman that could put David Savard on the second pair at most by the time his contract expires. Caden Gooley, B. He got his first taste of playing big minutes at the NHL level, and although it was not pretty, he did hold his own for a rookie. He did also have an injury-riddled season, but he also proved that he is one tough SOB, willing to play through pain, and he showed a good level of skating, physicality, and poise with the puck on his stick. With that being said, he still needs to work on his decision-making as he turned the puck over a little bit more than I would have liked to. He's a work in progress, but that's totally fine because he's still very young and he has plenty of time to achieve his potential, which I think is a top pairing defenseman on the Montreal Canadiens in the future. Joel Edmondson, D+. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Joel Edmondson because he did have an injury-riddled season, again, like many others on this list, but I will say his play was very disappointing down the stretch. Perhaps injuries have to do with that. The Habs should continue their youth movement on D, and Joel Edmondson at this point in his career should be on a contending team with a chance to win another Stanley Cup, which is why the Habs should trade him before his contract expires in order to get something in return. All right, I'm going to cheat a little with these next four because guess what? They're rookie defensemen, and I talked about them in a little more detail in this video right here. Jordan Harris, B. One of the Habs' most underrated players this season. Doesn't do anything great, but does so many little things well. Was also only a -3 on a bottom 10 Habs team. My only questions are, can he stay healthy for a full season? And can he handle even more minutes against even tougher competition? Jonathan Kovacevic, B+. If Jordan Harris isn't the most underrated player on the Montreal Canadiens, well then it's got to be Kovacevic. He's big, he's fast, but he plays a simple game. He is also the only defenseman on the Montreal Canadiens outside of Mike Matheson and Frédéric Allard, if you want to count him, to finish with a plus rating on the season. Justin Barron, C+. I think he has really good upside. He produced well offensively this year, but he still has to round his game out quite a bit more to be able to take on more responsibility. Arbor Xhekaj, B. He's big, tough, physical. The Habs haven't had a player like him in such a long time. He's beloved by the fans. He can lay a beating on any of the best fighters in the NHL, and of course, he can play. And finally, the last of the defensemen. He isn't a rookie, but I don't have really much to say about him. Chris Weidman, D. I'm sure he's a fine locker room guy, but he is a 7th defenseman at best. He was playing on the first power play wave earlier in the season. That didn't go so well. He didn't play much more than 13 minutes a game, and he shouldn't really be playing every game either. I also did not love his comments after the Habs got spanked by the Leafs last weekend and Sheldon Keefe put emergency backup goaltender Jed Alexander in for the last minute. Now finally, the goaltenders. Jake Allen, C. At this point in his career, Jake Allen is what he is. He is capable of strong stretches throughout a season, but ultimately, as he plays more games, he starts to wear down, which leads to injury and inconsistent play. And that was the story once again this season, as he stole a couple of games early on. And I will say, though, he does offer a calming veteran presence in net at times when things are chaotic. But ultimately, he did have a couple of really bad outings, most notably the game against Florida, where he came in relief of Sam Montembeault, but then he got pulled himself. I give Jake Allen a C because despite his ugly numbers, which we have to put into context from playing on a bad team, I acknowledge his really good performances, but also his really bad performances. And overall, I just think he had the season of an average 1B goaltender. And going forward, I think the sweet spot for Jake Allen would be around 30 to 35 games at most. Last but not least, Monty, Sam Montembeault, B. Montembeault finished the season with a save percentage above 900, which on a bad team in today's NHL is an accomplishment in my opinion. He was a difference maker in more games than Jake Allen was, and I found that Montembeault was less affected by heavier workloads. The bad games that he did have, he was able to battle his way through them, whereas Jake Allen, in his bad games, the bottom just seemingly fell out. Montembeault noticeably improved this year compared to last year, and I think he played more than well enough to earn the 1A goaltender role going into next season, where he plays closer to 45, maybe even 50 games next year, and that is why I give him B. So there you have it, my 30 Habs player grades this season in 20 minutes or less. What do you think about them? Let me know in the comment section below. But as usual, hit like, hit subscribe, give me a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Mike Langer for both, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next time.